Hi everyone, Neil Rogers here. In today's lesson we're going to look at scaling up our reference photo and we're going to start making our first marks on the paper. So if we're ready, let's get started. Okay, so we're ready to get started and put our first marks down on the paper. So if you remember, we've taken this original photo and we've used Snapseed and taken all the colour out, desaturated it, and then I've played around on Photoshop just looking at different backgrounds, playing around with it, and this is the image that I'm going to work from. Obviously yours, we could use the same face. You could just draw without manipulating the background. You could just draw straight from this. You could draw from your own reference photo that you want to draw from. The way I'm going to show you how to translate this onto the paper, you can use with any photo. You could use it from life if you want to. It's a pretty standard way of measuring the face and scaling it up to the paper that we're going to draw on. So let's get started. So the first thing that we want to do is find out how much bigger do we want this photograph to be on here. Now I know that from my experience that the photo on my iPad is going to be I want it to be twice as big on my piece of paper. So my scale will be 2:1. So everything that I measure from the photo, I want it to be double that on the piece of paper. If that's up to you how you want to do it. If you want to go 1:1, you can do that as well. You can just measure that head, go, there's my mark on the top, there's my mark, that's how big it will be. You could do a direct translation and an exact copy, size copy if you want to. I think it's better to scale it up, especially with charcoal. Bigger you go with charcoal, the better really, because it's although we can get quite sharp lines with the charcoal pencils, it's a medium that you want to push around a lot. It works better for me on a bigger scale, and doubling up from this iPad probably gives roughly a kind of a life-size portrait, which is always a good size to put a portrait. It really helps. So let's get started with our first marks. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to make a mark on the paper that we think is going to be the top of the head, where the hairline, where the top of that hair comes. So that's my first mark. This is just using the Willow. We don't want to use the compressed charcoal yet, because this is, we're going to be measuring 2 or 3 times maybe, just to make sure that we get it right. It's the measure twice, cut once rule. So you're never going to get it, always measure a couple of times. So now I've got my paintbrush, or you can use your ruler. Ruler comes in really handy for all drawing, painting. You can see mine's covered in paint and all sorts. Use it all the time. You can drop your verticals and have a look, see what matches with what. We can look at our horizontals. I can use it just to get really accurate measurements if I need to. Really handy. But if you haven't got a ruler to hand, you can use your paintbrush. What I want to do is get the end of the paintbrush, line that up with the top of the hair, and then I want to get my finger marking where the chin is. So I've got that measurement. I'm going to put the tip of the paintbrush on that mark, come down to there. That's going to be roughly where the bottom of the chin's going to be. So we've got 2 marks. That's going to be the top of the hair and the chin. So that's going to be the size of the portrait on the paper. Check it again just to make sure. So the tip of them there, down to there. Yeah, quite happy with that. You see, I'm not, you know, if you want to be super accurate, you can do it with the ruler. You know, just make sure you double up, get the lines. Yeah, pretty accurate. Accurate enough, I think, possibly. Maybe I've gone a little bit too big, but you know, I think it'll be okay. Okay, so now we've established where the chin will be, where the top of that hair will be, and now we need to try and determine what the width, what size that width is going to be. And again, you can just do this, you know, I want the side of that face to be there or there. You can do it quite randomly at this stage, it doesn't really matter, because we'll measure as long as we're consistent with that. I mean, you might want to take a measurement, and maybe if we're going 2 to 1, so that would be roughly, yeah, the middle. So you could find out where the middle is if you wanted to draw a line down the middle on your iPad. I think you can probably find a tool that will do that digitally. You know, you could probably draw a grid if you wanted to. I mean, you know, this is it could help us, but really you just need to, with this, I'm just gonna say it's going to be double that. So if I want it kind of centrally, let's just say we make that mark there, which represents the side of this cheek, and I want to come to this point on the cheekbone, which is roughly a couple, maybe about there. Have a look, see, yeah, kind of central enough, isn't it, I think, because we've got more hair on this side. Let's have a look, see if we can. Yeah, happy with where those marks are. That's going to be the width of the face. That's going to be from the top of the hair to the chin. So those are our 4 important marks. From these, we can mark out all of the features if you want to, as long as we know where this line is here, where we're going to measure down from. So we can measure in, we can measure down from the top, we can measure in from that side, and we can put all of our points in that we need to. So at this stage, I'm going to, you know, remeasure them again, make sure that they're accurate, make sure that you know, get your ruler if you're using a ruler, really check. Or maybe I've gone a little bit too big. Maybe a little bit. Again, that's something that we'll come, as long as I get 2 measurements, as long as these 2 are okay, hopefully we should work it out, that we can just roughly find out where the eyes are going to be, where the nose is. And if we mark these down, once we've remeasured them and got them as accurate as we can, we'll then put these in compressed charcoal so that we can keep them on the paper while we're messing around with all the other vine charcoal or willow charcoal, making some marks. You can always, if we know where these are, I mean, if you wanted to, maybe you could measure from the top of your paper. So from there, and then I could write, you know, it's 6 centimetres from the top would be the top of that hair. Make a little note of it on the top of your board. You know, you could do that, so we can always find out where it is. Maybe that one, just under 10, so 9 1/4. So I know if we ever lose that mark, it was that far in. So, you know, these are the really important marks, because we can, from these 4 marks, measure anywhere we want on this face. So that's what we're going to do next. Okay, so what I want to look at now, let's try and work out a couple of points. So maybe let's see where this hairline comes. I mean, this is a really interesting photo to work from because of this angle. You know, because of the angle there, trying to translate that onto the paper. You know, what we tend to do is when we're drawing an angle like that, the face, we tend to straighten it out. We don't like to have that angle there. It kind of confuses us a little bit sometimes. We're always trying to, our brain's telling us that, oh, the eye should be level. It shouldn't come at an angle. So we've got to try and work out how much higher this eye will be from that eye. So we've got our mark at the top. Again, that's there. So I can go from that line. So although I've only got it there, imagine that it's a line that's running all the way across. If you want to, you could put that line down quite lightly. Or again, you put this measurement up on the top, you could run it down and go, right, I know it's going to be that far down from the top of the paper. And then I can put a little mark there, and then we'll measure down from it. So we're going to measure down to where I'm going to go to where the top of that eyebrow is. So again, I'm going to use this paintbrush, move across, and it is roughly that. I'm going to line it up with there, try and keep my eye on it, and it's going to be roughly there. Again, we can do it with this one here, so we can try and find out what that angle is going to be. So, same method, we'll just line up the top, move it across. Actually, that's pretty much that. And that says it's going to be about there. So you can see the top, you know, that's our angle. And yeah, works pretty well. You can also, you know, we can then go, well, where do we think the nose comes? Again, bottom of the nose, should we go for? Go from there, 1, 2. So I can make a little mark there, but I need to know, is that in the right place width wise? Well, we take it from this edge of the cheek where we've measured from, that's our mark there, corresponds with here. Let's go to the middle of the nose. I can go 1, 2. It's going to come about there. You can take your eraser, get rid of that mark. I don't want that one. I think I might remeasure that one. I may have, looks to be a bit far over. Yeah, just a little bit. And that's the thing, so the more that you use this, the more that you'll, like I've just done there, and gone, well, I think that probably might be a bit too far over. Is that, you know, you're looking at it, measuring it against this bit of cheek here, it was like, well, if that's the middle of the nose, it can't be there because that's too far over. And again, you know, with the iPad, what's great is that you can do, if I zoom in a little bit and I want to get a vertical, you know, I can do that, and I can go, well, the edge of the nose will go up to there, it'll come to the edge of that mouth. It's quite a way from the edge of that cheek. So from here, you know, it's up to you really. You can put as many marks in here as you want to. One of the ones I always like to try and find where the hairline is, because, you know, it looks, the hairline is quite, you know, there's quite a lot of hair on top there. So when I'm looking on my piece of paper, it seems that it's an incredibly long portrait. Let's say we go, but with this we could do it twice. So we can go, I'm going to go from the chin, put my finger on the chin, mark there. I reckon it's going to be about there. But then I can also measure from the top down. And that's telling me it's about there. So it's possibly in between the two. You know, so you got that. Yeah, it's somewhere in between the two of those. That should be that bit of hairline. But again, that's going to be on an angle. So at some point, we need to measure where it coming from that, where that corner will be. We've worked out that's the top of the eyebrow there. Maybe we want to know where this bit starts of the eye there. We've seen that's the top of the eyebrow. Maybe we just want to find out where that bit of nose comes in. So again, we can go from that side. So roughly about there. And again, I can go from the chin, come across. 1, 2. So roughly there. So as you can see, from these 4 marks, we can start to plot our way around, putting in the features, measuring down, we can measure up, we can measure from across. So we can get a reasonably, I mean, if you want to, you could spend a lot of time on this now and put it all in. I'm proposing that we don't, in that we just make sure that we're going to put these in with our compressed charcoal now. So I'm happy with those measurements. I'm going to just make that. They don't have to be big marks, but putting them in with the compressed charcoal just means that they're going to stay. The rest of them, I'm not too fussed with. They're just a guide for me at the moment of roughly where the eyes are going to be. So we're going to put some shading in there. We've worked out that's the middle of the nose, that's going to be the top. So we can roughly work out that the angle is going to come down there somewhere. Perhaps we could measure where the mouth comes, maybe where the middle of the mouth, that might be a nice point to find. So again, we can come down. Yeah. It's going to be roughly where the middle of the mouth is, where the middle of the nose was. We can come from the chin, find out where the very top is. Oh, that's wrong. You see? my measurement there was making it up to here. So either I'll put the nose in the wrong place or I'm measuring the mouth wrong. It's one or the other. That's why we're doing it in the willow charcoal, because we can rub any of these marks out. Those we put in compressed because we want to keep them. They're our lines that we're going to go from. So let's just measure again. Let's go nose to the bottom of the nose from there. And you see that says that's going to be up there a little bit. And again, I can go from the top and just double check. And yeah, you see, I can now rub that mark out. That's where the bottom of the nose, that's where that bit of nose and that bit of shadow will be. That was our middle of the mouth, so let's just measure that again. Well, that's very strange. Oops. Let's measure it from the top. Yeah. So it's going to be about there. Which I guess yeah, so the nose comes up just a little bit. Again, it's not, at this stage, it's not massively important because we're going to put a lot of charcoal down and a lot of these marks will get lost. It's just, I'm just showing you here that if you wanted to just, you could just do this and get an entire line drawing by plotting all these little points. You know, you could plot where the eye, the middle of the eye is, edge of this nose, plot it all. But for me, when you do that and when you do it at the start, you tend to end up with a line drawing that you then don't want to mess up. So at this stage, for this class, this is enough information for us to get started. So if we can get to this stage, then we'll start putting some charcoal down. But yeah, you know, if you want to use this method, you could plot all of it. You know, you could go, where's that bit of nose? I can put that mark in. I can then connect, you know, almost join the dots almost. You know, where's this mark? You know, we can come down here. How far down does that come? And I can get that bit of neck there. We could mark that. I could mark where this neck comes by going across. You know, you can plot all of these points and get a really accurate drawing. And you know, you can use this if you've got a person sitting there. You can use exactly the same thing. You know, you have to just hold the pencil or the ruler or whatever it is in your hand at arm's length. Make sure you're standing in the same spot. Close one eye, measure it, put it down on your piece of paper. So just before we start to put the charcoal down on the paper, I think a really useful thing that we could do, you know, obviously we need to keep these 4 marks. We need to know where they are. We're going to start covering the paper with charcoal. So really useful if we just measure how far in they've come, and then we'll put those marks corresponding on the outside of the paper so that we can always find where those marks are. So I can just go on the top, mark there, I can do the same on the bottom. So I've now got no way of losing where those lines are going to be. This will also help us in that we can just line those up if we need to, and we'll always know where that line is. If we want to know, you know, we could make a little mark just further up if we need to measure across and we want to do it a little bit more accurately. So do the same on the sides. So we've got those 4 marks on our paper. We're not going to lose them because those are what we're always going to start coming back to after when we start drawing again, after we've made some marks on the paper. Now we've got our marks on the outside of the paper. We know exactly where these are. If we ever need to come back to them, we can draw our lines. So it's time to put some charcoal on the paper. So if you have made a pants bag, or if you managed to buy one, this is the perfect time to start using it. We can just draw with it, give some really nice marks. You know, we can just start looking where are the darks, roughly put in just some shapes. You know, that's our hair. But, you know, if you haven't got one of these, you know, you don't want to use it, it's going to be a bit too messy. Then all we need to do, you know, I'm just going to take a thin piece of charcoal, whatever size charcoal you've got, it's fine. I use it quite small like this because I like to just use that broad stroke that we can get when we just use the side of it. You know, it's about putting, that's quite dark, we know that there. So let's just put some marks down. We're not worried too much about the drawing side at the moment. We just want to put some charcoal down, roughly where we think it should be. You know, the darks, there's no real darks on the side of, in the face itself really. So we can leave that for a time being. And just make some marks. Put some charcoal down and we'll slowly start to refine it, the happier that we get. You see, you know, on Photoshop I've kind of darkened that side down. I quite like, you know, I think that we might lose some of it. If you've got this, you can push it around a little bit. This is what we want to do really. We want to just, you know, treat it as though we're just going to put it down and then we can draw on it later. But for now it's just about getting some of it down, moving it around, treating it almost like paint. You know, that's the beauty of charcoal. Even though it's a dry medium, it's very fluid. You know, you can make interesting marks with it, put it down, take it off. It's a lot more forgiving than people think. So we can put, you know, quite a lot of charcoal down. And take it off, mess around with it. So we measured where this is the eye, so we know that's going to be quite a bit of shadow in there. Kind of roughly put in, that was the nose, mouth. It's dark underneath there, isn't it? Let's just try and not worry too much. Let's just put it down. If you want to get your fingers in there, get your fingers in. You can use a kitchen roll if you want to. If you think, oh, I don't like where that is, and rub that out. We can get a putty rubber take things out that we don't like easily enough. Remember, this is just the willow charcoal, so it should erase fairly well if you think it's in the wrong place. But at the moment, you know, we're not really thinking of right or wrong places. We just want to get some charcoal on, and we just want to experiment with some mark making. You know, you don't have to just try and do the drawing. You know, we can get our long stick if you want. We can draw with the end of it, put some scribbles in where we think the eye is. We know it's dark, that's all we need to know. We know it's dark. Maybe we want to define where the edge of that nose is. So again, we can measure. We've still got the mark there. It's going to be about there. There's a shadow under that chin. Under the chin, under the jaw, cheek. So just having a look at where's dark, where's light. You know, not really thinking too much of details. You know, a rough idea that the mouth is going to be there, underneath the lips it's going to be dark. We know this is our chin. So there's got to be dark underneath there. And just put some marks down. A few scribbles. We'll come to refine it later. You know, I want that dark maybe running off up there. As you can see, you know, we're just going to start slowly forming the idea of where this face is, but all the time we're also trying to think, can I make some interesting marks? We don't just want it to be a copy of the photograph. We want it to be a drawing that stands, that people can look at and go, oh, that's got some interesting marks in it. You know, it could be that we battle with it and struggle with it, and people like to see. You know, we might have lots of these marks coming in of where we're measuring, and we could leave those in if we wanted to. People, you know, love to see the struggle that you have to get a portrait in. So again, we want to not be afraid to get the darks in, big bold strokes. At the moment, again, this is just the willow, so you can see you can get some rich darks, but we can also get rid of them if we wanted to, because it is the willow. You know, this will erase, we can rub it, we can do whatever we want really. Let's just get some interesting marks going. You can see we've got a bit of shadow on there, so you can just rub and come down. It's going to be more shadow underneath in that eye area. So just build it up gradually, and then we'll start to refine it a bit more. So at this stage, I'm just looking to get rid of some of this white paper from around the outside, build up some of the bigger shapes that we can see, try and put some dynamism into some of these strokes. You know, we're not going to be too fussy, we're going to come back into it. But what we can also, you know, it's up to you where you want to go from this bit here now. In that, you know, you may want to define the face, find out where that outside edge is, or you may want to pinpoint exactly where the eye is. You know, using that same method, we can measure where the eye is. You could start from there, start and put some more detail in. You know, we know roughly that it's in here. We know roughly, I think we measured that as about there. You might want to try and get this shape maybe, you know, so you could find out where the corner of this jawline is. Again, just using the same. We know where our marks are. If we lose our marks, because we've measured them on the outside, you know, we can still find them. Find that one and that one. And again, we go from the top, we go in, we can find out where any point is. So really, you know, still thinking about bigger shapes. You know, you can see that little bit of eye that comes in and then the eyelid comes out. Maybe the hair, we can just make that come down there. Okay, so now we've got some charcoal down. I'm just going to darken that side down a little bit. It's time to start defining some of the features, really. You know, obviously it's, you know, this is where we can start using our measurement again. For me, you know, I'd quite like to define this side of the face, I think. So, you know, there's quite a few points that we could put there. I think that's going to be our strongest bit of contrast, you know, between the light and the dark. So it's a nice little dynamic. And I think if we can get that sorted, then the rest of it should slot into place, really. So I'm going to first of all try and find the corner of this jaw, which again, we know where the bottom of it is. I can put my ruler across the marks. So even though we've lost, oh, I haven't lost it, it's there. So, you know, we can put that ruler across. So we know it's going to be somewhere along that line. I can run down there. Oh, it's going to come from about there. It's going to be about there. So we can start to define that. Just taking not a great deal of care, but you know, we can just make that a little bit darker. We know that's our jaw, we know that's the bottom of our chin. Again, it's just the willow charcoal, so we're not overly committing to anything. I might just get myself a thicker piece. So now I want to find out just where this top of this cheekbone is. Again, and we can just measure it up from there. We know the width of it because that's where we've taken our measurement from. So if I can just measure from the bottom of the chin, it's going to be about there. And here, you know, I can now start just to define that edge there. So that's going to be in relation to that, so it's going to knock, comes in just a little bit, the eyebrow's going to come up. It's nice and dark on that side. Again, we can probably measure from the bottom, maybe see where the top of that eyebrow is. So we can go from there. Which is about right, about there. And it's going to come, again, if we zoom in, it's going to be a little bit wider than that mark there. So if we put our ruler down there from our marks on the outside, we know it's got to come that side a little bit. So I might just make a little mark with the putty rubber just outside. And then you know, that's about enough, I think. At the moment, that's all I need to, that's all we need. Quite like that shape there. I'll come back and refine it a bit more. Maybe we want to know where that bit is there. It's got to come from there. It's got to come up, yeah, roughly about there. So that can be our jawline there. Bring our neck down. Make that nice and dark. So, you know, I'm not looking, still not looking for any details at the moment. I'm happy that I know that if I get to struggle with anything, I can measure and find out where that'll be. So at the moment, we're just looking at lights and darks. do we need to get darker? This edge here probably gets slightly more refined as we go on, but really it's just about just trying to discern what these shapes are. So all I want to do now really is just, I'm going to think about the background a little bit. You know, I want that darker down there. Maybe we can, you know, run our hair into that. Might make it a bit more interesting. And try and find that overall, what's going to make it look interesting. As well as just the face, you know, we want it to be an interesting drawing. As you can see, you know, I mean, because it's the willow, it can come off, you know, we don't need to, we can leave it nice and dark, but as soon as we touch it, we can erase it. So, really, at this stage, we've got a lot of charcoal down. We can, in the next stage, start to just refine it a little bit, get a little bit more accurate with our measuring, so we can start to then drop things in more precisely, and we'll just kind of slowly refine the whole picture, and we'll start to bring it together, looking at where, you know, the eyes are going to go, and the nose, and the mouth should be somewhere about there, maybe. We'll look at refining these edges. You know, these are the things, from now on, from this stage onwards, this is where it starts to become, you know, we start to take our time a little bit more. We've made all our expressive marks. At this stage, if you wanted to, you could spray the acetone on if you're going to do that, and you can make some interesting marks for the background. You know, we could maybe leave a lot of charcoal on there and get some dribbles in if we use that acetone. Again though, if you're going to use the acetone, well ventilated, be very careful, highly flammable, but you know, it can make some interesting marks, nice splashes. Whatever you do, don't get it in your eyes. Sometimes this is best if you you know, you lay your board flat so you can dribble it from the top. If you're going to use this, you know, experiment. I quite like to get those dribbles coming down. Really interesting marks. So, you know, for this stage, I'm thinking that's at a fairly good place. A little bit more work to do maybe. You know, we want to maybe get some of this side a little bit darker. There's a little bit of dark in there as well. We'll refine where this jaw comes in. But yeah, I'm reasonably happy with where that is. Well, next we'll start to look at more accurate measurements. Well, that's the end of today's lesson. Thank you for drawing along with me. and I'll see you next time.